pass in the House, much less the Senate? Or is President Obama going to stomp all over it tomorrow? We're joined by our political expert panel tonight, Democratic political analyst Mark Hanna, National Review Washington editor and CNBC contributor Robert Costa, and Phil Musser, former executive director of the Republican Governors Association. Robert Costa, you know the highlights of this bill. You heard Jeff Flake, who's a pretty smart guy. Do you think it has any chance to pass the House?
Larry, I just got over here from Capitol Hill, sat down with Senator Marco Rubio, and he told me and other conservatives who are cheering for this bill to not be too exuberant, because this is just the principles that were outlined today. The president could still mess this up. The House of Representatives still has to mull this entire thing over. This was the first step of many that need to happen.
Why would the president mess this up, Phil Musser? I mean, Obama seems to have made this a priority. He was out last summer with an executive order to let the kids of illegals stay and go to school. Why would he screw it up?
Well, I think he's largely not led on this issue for his entire first term, Larry. I think it's instructive that the Democrats today chose to partner up with Senate Republicans as opposed to waiting to join on to the Obama bill. Frankly, I'm glad to see that the Senate is leading on this. I mean, people like Rubio and Flake deserve a lot of credit, because if Republicans put their fingers in their ears here and become the hell no caucus on this, it's going to be detrimental not only to our party but to the process. And frankly, there's a late report out with respect to the House, Larry, and I think there are probably some people along the same lines in the House who've been thinking about this for longer than we realize, and there might be a more accelerated timetable there for consideration.
Mark Hanna, it sort of blows my mind when I look at the roster here. We have Chuck Schumer of New York. We have Dick Durbin of Illinois, Robert Menendez of New Jersey. Pretty liberal senators, I think you would agree. And on the other side, we have some serious conservatives like Jeff Flake, who was just on as a guest, and Marco Rubio. Right coalition on immigration, Mark. How's that work?
I think it just speaks to the ideological diversity of our country and actually the evolution of the Senate now. And you see Senate Republicans that used to treat compromise like a dirty word. Now they're coming out and putting forward a proposal with their Democratic colleagues that to a large degree mirrors the key principles that the president has identified. I do agree that this is a golden opportunity for senators like Marco Rubio and with the other guests that mentioned that. But I do disagree that the president hasn't shown leadership here. He has been talking about comprehensive immigration reform as a key priority of the first, as the beginning of the second term. So I think that what the Senate Democrats and Republicans have done is gotten out in front and trying to take ownership of this issue, because they see that it's going to happen. The president has sort of given it an air of inevitability. And I'm tremendously encouraged by the first signs here.
Real quick, Larry, one thing you have to watch is what Senator Flake just said. The key part of this bill that's going to determine whether Republicans come on board is this commission of Southwestern legislators and leaders who are going to determine whether this process is going to move forward. This commission is what Rubio's talking about and Flake's talking about. This is all about enforcement. So Republicans in the next few weeks are going to be asking tough questions about enforcement, how the border is going to be secured. That is going to determine whether this thing moves forward.
Well, okay, Phil Musser, I like what Robert said, but we've been down this road before.
Growth.
Border security and amnesty have always been two stumbling blocks. Look, I don't agree with the conservatives, my fellow conservatives. I don't even agree with my own magazine, the National Review, on this. I've always been more liberal. I'd like to see some progress. I do like the balance in this bill. But my point is, border security and amnesty, Phil Musser, have always been stumbling blocks to what I think is a pro-growth measure. But very few of my conservative colleagues agree.
Well, they should start listening to you, because cloaking this language in the language of economic growth is a really smart idea. I mean, the H-1B issue is a no-brainer, to use your Brainiac term, that could lead to significant enhancement in growth for our own domestic industries here. With respect to border enforcement, I mean, frankly, we're getting much better at that as it exists, and with systems like E-Verify being used by states in place for many, many years now, technology is, I think, quickening the path by which we could accelerate this discussion. So it's just really important at the outset for Republicans not to put their fingers in their ears and say, hell no on this thing because of
no, take their heads out of their sand. It's not just a political issue. It's an economic growth issue.
It is a growth issue.
It's a growth issue. That's the way it should be viewed. It's the brainiacs, and let's face it, all right, it's the undergroup that wants to come in and help us in the agricultural fields and help us in the hotels and help us in the retail stores. But we need them. We need them. Whole parts of the country need this thing. That's why it's important. It's not just the politics, although the GOP should get wise on that, but there's an economic growth platform in this.
Yes, and Larry, this is Mark. I think it's not just the pro-growth economic platform, but also restoring integrity to our economy. There's a fundamental lack of integrity when you have 11 million men, women, and children sort of in the shadows that are paying taxes. Some of them paying taxes, some of them aren't. Some of them are, taking advantage of healthcare services in our country.
Well, there's not going to be any. There's not, through this process, by the way, there's not going to be any welfare. Not going to be any welfare. That's written in here. But secondly,
there is a path to citizenship.
I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to bring you back every time. The unions are going to oppose this, Mark. They always do. You can blame it on Republicans as much as you want, but the unions hate this stuff because they're trying to protect these outdated jobs.
They're getting more and more realistic, and I think you see a lot of, with the Hispanic leadership or some of the Latinos that are leading some of these unions, they understand that the nature of labor in this country is fundamentally changing, and I think they're welcoming
I do think business. I think you get a more orderly card system. Business will like this. It'll make it easier to verify, so they won't have to be closed down and fine. Gentlemen, I got to get out of here. Mark Hanna, Phil Musser, Robert Costa, thanks very much. Now, folks, are you ready for those big, across-the-board sequester spending cuts? I